She slowly walked down from her room to the living room, wearing her robe and looking tired. This is what happened when she was blue. She would tell me she was sick and tightly clutch her collar around her neck, complaining of a sore throat. Those days I had to play quietly by myself. I remember thinking to myself, she's sick a lot. Now I wonder if the physical symptoms were a part of her mental illness or the side effect of all the pills she was taking. Somehow, though, she always pulled herself together for dinner. Our kitchen was tiny and decorated in avocado green to match the carpet. The avocado upholstery on our chairs matched the avocado fridge, which complemented the faux oak table that seated 6 in the center of the room. I was always stuck at the end of the table, right in front of the oven, the door that couldn't be opened if I was sitting at the table. When my mom had to get food out, I had to move. Every night, my brothers and I and my mom ate dinner together at 6. I sat in front of the oven. Anthony sat next to my mom, and Stephen sat by himself across from them. My dad was at the opposite end from me, but he usually came home too late for dinner. We were not a family who ate out, except for the occasional Sunday trip to Borelli's, the only place we deemed good enough to replace a proper Italian meal, or pizza at a place called Anthony's. But mostly my mom cooked, and she was a great cook. Chicken cutlets, broiled steak. She occasionally worked as a food demonstrator, meaning she was the lady in the mall with a microphone around her neck who made something in a wok and then handed out the samples. I remember being in the 9th grade when she did the wok demo. We ate Chinese 3 days a week. In 10th grade, it was the pasta maker, which looked like a toaster with a hand crank. Once we sat down, dinner lasted about 5 minutes and was almost always eaten in front of the Zenith. We watched the news, the Vietnam War unfolding on our screen as we shoveled food into our mouths. It was actually television more than food that brought us together. None of us could believe it when The Sound of Music, Best Picture from 1965, appeared on TV just a year later. We couldn't wait to watch it. It was an event. Saturday nights in our house were ruled by Carol Burnett and All in the Family. Sunday belonged to Ed Sullivan. And then during commercials, we talked about the musical acts, with my dad usually joking, "You call that music? That's not music." Then he'd break into a Frank Sinatra song from the 1940s. We all laughed, especially my mom. When she was in a good mood and balanced, she was all love. She was very physical. She would grab my friends and kiss them on the head and say for no reason at all, "Oh, your mother must be so proud." She'd be so warm, telling all the neighbors and my friends to come over, that her kitchen was never closed. The problem was, you never knew when that mood was going to change. She would spend 3 days being as warm and loving as anyone you'd ever seen, and then 3 days being normal mom. And then on the 7th day, she'd wake up saying she was feeling blue. Most people in their lives have an incident involving their parents, the moment when their mom or dad just loses it, and rage trumps being rational. Well, we had incidents. Sometimes my mom would plop food down at dinner and then angrily bang some pots and pans while she washed them before dropping them all together in a loud clang. We never knew what had set her off. She'd walk into her room screaming and slam the door. You couldn't believe the words that came out of her mouth. Fuck, 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 fuck. A sailor would have blushed. She'd come out, we'd think it was over, then she would dial a phone number, usually one of her sisters, and fight with whoever could provoke her into a rage. Then she'd slam the phone down 5 or 6 times, go back into her room, and scream some more. "These people think they live on an island," she liked to say. "Like you live all by yourself and you do whatever you want. They think they can pull one over on me. They think I don't know. They think I don't see. I see what's going on." The episodes didn't frighten me in a way that made me cower under the table or flinch if my mom came near me. I always loved her, but they affected me in other ways. How could they not? I had a bedwetting problem until I was in the 2nd grade, and I felt horrible about it. Not because my parents got angry with me or because my brothers made fun of me. Neither happened, actually. I was too young for my brothers to think of me as a rival worthy of their torment. I just felt bad because I didn't know why it was happening. I was peeing in my sleep so often that my mom went to the drugstore and bought an expensive machine that connected to the bed. It had an alarm that went off whenever liquid hit the mattress. We never even connected it. That night my dad got home and said, "What good is that? If the alarm goes off when liquid hits the mattress, it's too late." My mom said she was going to return it. That's when Stephen chimed in, pretending to be our mom calling the pharmacy. "Hi, this is Mrs. Dell'Abate. I'd like to return the piss machine." One morning, showing a little frustration, my mom said to me, "You have to stop doing this." I said back, "I know, I want to." If I'd have known then what I know now, I probably would have said, "Stop screaming like a banshee, and maybe I'll stop peeing in my bed." Mostly when my mom lost it, Anthony, Stephen, and I never said a word to one another. If she morphed at dinner, we just kept eating, giving one another looks. But we didn't want to talk because whoever spoke would draw attention to himself and become the target of her rant. Other than my mom yelling, no one said a word. Blind rages like that only have to happen 7 or 8 times before you adapt and get used to it. Every explosion, we'd all just wonder how long the episode would last. Their length was never something you could gauge. My dad would get home, hear what was going on, and say, "Okay, this is what we get today." From where I sat, it always seemed like my mom was the one looking to pick a fight. One day she accused my father of cheating. I was at home when she called his office and started screaming at his assistant and the boss's assistant. When he got home, he told her she couldn't call his office and yell like that. She screamed back, "I don't care." Mostly, though, when my father walked through the door and my mom started with him, he'd say, "You know what? I am not going to fight with you tonight." Then he would sit in his chair and read the newspaper. She'd still try to pick a fight with him. Sometimes she would grab me and say, "We're leaving. We're moving back to Brooklyn." The first time it happened, it freaked me out. I remember crying. I wondered if I'd ever see my dad or my brothers again. And where were we going to live when we got to Brooklyn? But I couldn't ask her any of these questions because she was ranting nonstop. Ranting and driving. We would be in the car on the Long Island Expressway, then just as quickly as we had left the house, she'd get off the LIE, turn around, and take us home. We'd wake up the next morning, and she'd act like everything was normal. I learned to act like everything was normal, too. When I was a little older, my mom would yell and scream from the time I went to school in the morning until my dad got home at night. I would go to sleep, and she'd still be screaming. She was manic. I wasn't sure if she ever slept. I'd curl up in the fetal position in my bed and scream into the pillow out of frustration. But then the next day I had to get up. I had to forge ahead. What was I supposed to do? Wake up in the morning and fall apart? That was a survival skill. Maybe I thought if I got up and acted like it didn't happen, and she kept acting like nothing happened, then it wouldn't happen again. If everything was back to normal, I preferred we go with that idea and hope it stayed that way. Hope can be a powerful thing.
Chapter 3. Throwing Shoes, Swinging Shrubs, and the Shock of My Life.
One cold and cloudy afternoon in late fall, sometime after my mom had been hospitalized, I came home from first grade and found her hurrying to get out of the house. Today was going to be that kind of day, I thought. She put me in the car and drove me to a doctor's office. I'd never been there before. I didn't know it was a psychiatrist. She sat in the waiting room with me, sobbing hysterically, and when she was called, she just left me sitting there. She didn't think twice about that. But back then, mothers smoked while they were pregnant, let their kids ride without car seats. They didn't always think about their child's welfare. I waited, wondering if this doctor was going to make her feel better, but when she came out, she was crying even harder. The doctor stood behind her. His name was Dr. Peck, and he looked like someone out of a textbook, heavy-set with a tweed jacket